Anthony, we're getting to talk about Hawaii today, one of my favorite destinations, and maybe a little Japan too.
Aloha.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn. You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching No Vacancy Live. Though today it's recorded because our guest is from Hawaii, and we just thought it'd be cruel to make them do a live show at 6 a.m. That's Anthony Melchiori. I'm Glenn Hausman. Anthony, how are you today?
Well, I take offense to you saying thanks for watching, because maybe people are watching.
It's true. Maybe you're listening on our audio feed, but you'll probably want to tune in and see this video as well, because it's so much fun. Of course, you could get that wherever you get your audio podcasts and video podcasts on. You know where it is: LinkedIn, Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So, Anthony, one of my favorite things is luxury hospitality and Hawaiian hospitality. And we're going to combine those two things today. What are you excited about that?
You're going to combine them, so it's going to be Hawaii and luxury hospitality. Luxury, Hawaii, and hospitality. Got it.
Right. Oh, well, maybe even Asian, because they do have property in Japan that I want to talk about as well. All right, here we go. Mr. Peter Shaindlin, COO Halekulani Corporation, one of my favorite companies out of Hawaii. Peter, it is great to see you again. How are you?
Great to see you guys. Great, thank you.
Awesome. So I feel like I have to do this disclaimer. One of the reasons why I love this company so much is, Peter, this is going to drive you nuts. 19 years ago, I did a little bit of PR, and Halekulani was one of the companies that I worked with. I had a great opportunity to really learn about luxury hospitality, what makes you guys special, and some of the other things that you offer. So that's why I'm a big fan of what you guys are up to begin with. But Peter, and I know I'm going to let you guys speak in a second, I happened to be in Hawaii a couple of years ago. I got to walk through, had a couple of drinks, and it just really took me back. So congratulations on having a property that's been maintaining its standards, not just for the 19 years that I've been aware of it, but I think for getting on 100 years now.
Yeah, it's 107 years young now. Second century.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Anthony, you're in real good shape, right?
Will you guys show some commitment, please? No. Well, also, if you're looking, I took my glasses off because we have basically the same haircut, the same facial structure. We've got the same size ears, and we're wearing the same sports jacket and same shirt. It's a little weird there.
Switch up. There we go.
We're trendsetters.
Our next guest, Ron Pohl from World Hotels.
Take yourself out of it and put us next to each other.
All right, I'm going to take myself out.
See, we're twins.
Oh, yeah, look at that. That's right. Yeah, well,
We look like twins.
Strikes twice. Fantastic.
That's hysterical. See, all you audio listeners, this is why I said you need to watch the show right here for this kind of great content. Anthony, we're going to continue to break news here on this show like you just broke here today. But 107 years, that takes a lot of commitment, Peter.
Yeah, it does. And, there's an energy here. There's a bit of folklore that it seems to be true when we researched it, that Robert Lewis, who owned the old building, which we preserved, where two of our restaurants are, including Le Maire and Orchids, Lewis Lounge, the famed jazz bar, were there in the early 1900s, and that Robert Lewis, who was having a great business success in the lumber business here, was dining out in what is now Orchid's open water dining room over the sea, and a fishing boat, just as it does today, at sunset came trying to get up the coast to the west to get home.
Yeah.
At that time, they had no electricity on the boats, nothing. And it was too late. They couldn't make it, and they pulled up on the beach right in front of the dining room where he had his chef's table set out for the family. And he said, "What do you got in the boat?" And these guys said, "We'll fish, we're fishermen." And he said, "Well, I'll cut you a deal." He says, if you guys share some of that fish, it looks great. I'll have my chef cook it. You join us at the table.
Yeah.
And you can stay overnight in the house. I have plenty of rooms. And then you can get up safe in the morning, get home in the morning to your families. And he did that. But it's hard to understand now how profound that was, that broke racial and cultural barriers there in a constructive way. Mm-hmm. And our servers in that dining room, for example, deeply believe that the core, that the ethos of their service mission is based on the hospitality that the chord he struck that night with those people. And they'll tell that story. So that's that type of thing that can only happen in an iconic institution over time. You know, stories and a meta history develops slowly.
But you need the time to do that. And the challenges that came over the 107 years. Think about recessions and, you know, storms and wars.
World War II. That might have been nearby.
Yeah.
Right, not to say that specifically, but wars, and of course that thing that we call COVID. You know, and you're still surviving. So think of all the twists and turns of the people that came before you, and the people that are going to come after you. To sustain something like that really takes a commitment from the ownership.
You know, it's funny that you touch on something it's so vital what you just said, because I couldn't agree more. You know, years ago, at the beginning of my career, in the Caribbean, I was working for Lawrence Rockefeller, the old rock resorts. And
Wow.
he said to me one day, and I'll never forget, I was 30 and he was in his 80s. And he said, "Remember, Peter, they're not paying for the room." You know, I'll never forget that. You know, why would a guy stay in a premier suite here when we've got 2 butlers? He's got 4 at home. Right. He's, you know, the suite is 4,000 square feet and his house is 40,000 square feet. That what do we have here that he cannot take home or buy? And that ethereal but very real essence of an iconic experience is you got to go to the mountain. You know,
I remember when I took over the Algonquin in the Oak Room, the cabaret, the famous cabaret.
Yeah.
And then we weren't doing well. And I remember saying to the team, the people that come to this room on a Wednesday night that are paying $500 for music and dinner, okay, bought it, sold it, invented it. You are not going to impress them with anything other than a feeling. And if we don't inspire them and we don't shift their emotions, we fail. And that's what you're saying.
Yeah, totally. For example, for the Algonquin, for me, I would go to the Algonquin because Dorothy Parker went to the Algonquin, and she was there, 70 years ago now, something like that? All right.
But the early 1920s.
Almost 100. Wow. Okay, 100 years. So I'm a book reader. I want to feel her energy in that room, you know, and that's the Algonquin, right? No other place on earth has that particular energy field. And we have that. But what I think one of the keys is, and one of the challenges too, is with staff, as much as we just had a celebration of 40-year employees. And out of 850, we had 41 40-year employees. Yeah, it was. And what scared me is a few of them were younger than I was, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm only 20. I'm on probation.
I was about to say, I remember you were very new when I first got to meet you at the company. And it's incredible that you're still there 2 decades later. That says a lot about your relationship with the property and the company. Why do you love it so much, and what keeps you there?
Or Glenn, you just can't find good talent, one or the other.
I was giving it a benefit of doubt because we go back, you know. Come on.
I was gonna say it was the surfing, but let's you know, that's a really good question. And I think when I think about our business, and you guys know firsthand how challenging it is. And you know, every day you walk in and you think you've seen it all, and something happens, another thing that's still not in the playbook.
Yeah.
You think you've seen it all after all these years. I think that the business attracts people like us who like the unpredictable. And I think Halekulani, for me, it was happenstance the first half of my career, but it was always leading iconic institutions. I was lucky enough to end up these different places. You know, the Caribbean rock resorts, Boca Raton Resort and Club, working at the UN in New York and food and beverage, things like this. So it was always an iconic institution. And over time, it was really happenstance. But I found that started to represent something to me. And what I learned is you don't manage an iconic institution, you shepherd it along, because it was there before you came. Even if I stay 40 years, it's gonna outlive me. It's gonna outlast me. So my responsibility is to keep the DNA at the core true and preserved and protected. But then you have to make it resonant, and it has to be relevant to the contemporary traveler. And for me, it doesn't matter as much which institution I'm in. I want to be in one that has that heartbeat. And this one just really, really does. And the culture is wonderful here. And I learned from the people because it's a different place from where I grew up, you know. So it's got an allure, it's got a draw, and I think it's the same draw that brings people to the hotel as guests.
You know, and what's interesting about that area of the world, and you know, Hawaii was everything, right? In the 70s, growing up, you saw it on TV. And then I don't know if it was the 80s or the early 90s, kind of Hawaii fell off, and then now Hawaii's been hot again.
Yeah, I think that, well, I'll say this also, having worked in the Caribbean and other islands around the world, I think I always say islands are all different and they're all the same in the sense that they have, for better and for worse, they change less than the more connected, larger continents, you know, because of intercommerce, internal travel and accessibility and borders and everything else. So they're in one sense, they're more protected from the craziness of the outside world. So I do think, to your question, I feel sometimes we say to our guests, you know, the crazier the world gets out there, for better or for worse, and often for worse these days, we're still here in the bones of this thing. That DNA I referred to are still here. You can still come back and be cosseted in this environment. And it feels like a sort of I think part of what we do in today's travel industry is try to provide a safe haven emotionally. The area needs to be safe, you know, and I think that is one reason with Hawaii is it is considered safer than so many over the water destinations in the world today. So I think all that collectively helps us a lot.
I will give one anecdote. I got married in spring of 2002, and I was planning the honeymoon right after 9/11, and I'd wanted to go somewhere not USA, but I felt I would get that exotic experience, but have that feeling of safety along with it. So that, you know, I totally experienced that myself.
Yeah, it's a combination. It doesn't. Some people will stay in Hawaii. They'll say feels more international. Feels like Hong Kong or someplace that's there's just a real melting pot of its own.
Also, such Japanese influence.
Yes, huge.
By the way, for the record, I had some of the best sushi of my life ever when I was down in Hawaii last time. Which is
But when you said that, I realized, wow, you've only been married, what, 22 years? 20
Yes.
years? How long have you been married?
Yeah. And we've only been married like 6. So, you know.
Yeah. Only 6?
I think we started 2017, doing stuff together.
We've been married 17 years?
I don't know. No. I don't know. Anyway, moving on to the real topic.
Topics.
Yeah, I want to talk about the evolution of luxury hospitality, right? We were talking a little bit earlier about that feeling. And at Halekulani, you're about trying to capture more of that formalized feeling of luxury. And over the last couple of years, you recently reinvented the former Waikiki Park across the street, which used to be, I think, more business focused, to Ala Puna, which is more now luxury, but more of that modern, casual luxury kind of feel. I think it's pretty cool that you got both sides of the luxury coin going on over there. How are they? Yeah. How are they different?
How are they different? They're different in that I think Halepuna, for many guests who want the quality standard, particularly in terms of the human element of the hotel experience and luxury, it's very consistent with Halekulani, just delivered in a slightly different tone and flavor. It's contemporary, accessible luxury. I'd call it that. A lot of guests say, "Oh, you're the first really luxury boutique hotel in Waikiki." We hadn't thought of that, but a lot of people tell us that. So that's
interesting, because I guess the notion of boutique hotel is more comfortable, you know, more laid back.
Right. We have a saying to that degree, to that point, which we say we're sort of tucked away, steps away. You know, when you do come back in, just like Halekulani has that oasis of calm, that feeling of tranquility. You hustle bustle Waikiki. It's fun. It's exciting. Come with shopping bags, but you got to wind down the volume really fast. It's got that same feel. And actually, really 23 floors, stunning views over Halekulani right up the coastline.
I think you can see it. Is that it right there?
Yeah, that's it on the top right on your finger. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's it right there. Thank you. And so best of both worlds. And because we're a cul-de-sac there between the two properties, it really is, you come into our little world there between the two. Guests at Halepuna will use Spa Halekulani, steps away across the street. We have a fabulous, we opened a bakery in Halepuna. It's a Halekulani bakery, but in Halepuna across the street. We opened that just after COVID, and that's one we're so proud. It's won every imaginable award near and far, and straightforward bakery going in. But what we did is we took our chefs who were doing, always the bakery in the other restaurants at Halekulani itself. That is always the dessert, the breads, but they never kind of had their opportunity to showcase those pastry chefs, those bakers and so forth. So we gave them their own space, and it's also retail for the neighborhood because we think we should engage with the community that we have the good fortune to prosper within. And that's been an awful lot of fun. We still have nothing frozen, nothing delivered that's baked.
Wow.
We don't even white bread, for a club sandwich, we bake the loaves. So we're trying to hold on to those signature touches at Halekulani and Halepuna.
Yeah.
It's otherwise commercially.
That's so important, not only for your legacy, but also that connection to the community, that I'm sure you have a very close relationship, but, an improvement in things like that, especially bread. I ran a bread company called Eche Panis, which means behold the bread. It was almost religion to Dr. Santo. If you know New York, you'll know Side of the Dove, Punto. So he owned those restaurants, and it was bread, and he opened a bakery for that reason, to connect to the community.
Interesting. I did not know that was his thinking there. That's really helpful to know. Very helpful. Yeah. It is. And it's funny with food and beverage, you guys know that, particularly in hotels that are in or near a metropolis, unlike an extremely remote, if you go to something like the Brando in the Fabulous, in the South Pacific, you got to eat at the hotel. There's no choice. There's no town, right?
Right.
Right. But here you can go out in Waikiki and there's 600 restaurants of every shape and form. So we need the guests, but you can't make a destination restaurant or hotel out of hotel guests because they only come once or twice a year, even if they're there for a month, right? So you got to have the local residents come in. And that's the great thing is if you give back to the community in other ways, they'll come and support you and appreciate coming to the hotel. And I think it gives us a lot of our character. I think that if you have a hotel where only guests are eating in, it does look a little touristy in the dining room, right? No matter even if it's elegant to Europe, anything else, right? But I think that when you have that mix, it gets a more real, substantiated, varied feel to the dining experience.
And to contrast that, when a guest sees the locals at the restaurant, it's like going to an Italian restaurant, seeing all the old Italians in there. It's a good restaurant.
Yes, that's right. But that point speaks to something else that you guys kind of touched on a couple of times already. This, in the tech age, what do you do with the human element, right? And everybody worries about AI, this, blah, 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 blah.
I just so everybody knows, Peter, we just did a keynote speech for high tech a couple of weeks ago, and that was like literally our topic.
Oh, interesting. I just argued in a talk I gave locally that on a related point, I think, is that what's the danger in restaurants now is losing their humanity. What's happened is, first of all, nobody should be using COVID and COVID rules as an excuse for anything today. It's just an excuse for raising prices or cutting supplies and quality, right? But the main thing is when you go to a restaurant, it should be about you, not about them. And when I'm getting a little bit disturbed when I hear the interviews by not hoteliers, because I think in a good way the hotel industry in this case really has the handle on how they're treating people in restaurants much better than the outside industry. Because we understand it's hard, but I came through food and beverage. You guys know this. It was always hard. And, for me to go in and be told that at a restaurant that you got to be here within 15 minutes or we give away the table. You can only stay for 90 minutes.
Right.
You have to order off a QR. You have to pay 2% for our kitchen payroll at the end of your check. We're putting on an automatic tip. You can't be seated till more than half of your large table has shown up, even though we took your credit card a week ago as a deposit. So this type of rigidity and self-based expression of what it's there for is really wrong. I argue vehemently that we all love dining out. We all have our favorite restaurants. We all want them to succeed, or we wouldn't have a place to go. But it's not the reason we're going to dine out is not to support them. We're going out because we want to I want a burger, and this is what's being forgotten. So there's a risk. I'll just finish the point by saying that I think what we all can learn in hospitality now, especially on the luxury side, don't lose your soulfulness. It's becoming a less soulful experience and more of a purely transactional experience. And I think that's a real danger. So when it comes full circle to luxury, every week the industry has a different definition of it. And we've been talking lately here about not using the word at all internally. It's just, let's not use the word luxury. Let's see what comes out if we don't allow ourselves to use that word.
And everything you just talked about is what we kind of talked about on the stage. Here we are, right? Two non-technical people, although, we're not dumb, but we're not, building code. We're not writing code. And, so, one of the things that we said to each other, we said, what is the thing that's consistent? So we had a slide. It's kind of funny. Like he talked about 1950, I talked about 1950 customer journey, and he talked about 2024 customer journey. And so what do you do in 1950? You think about the hotel, think about vacation, you book the hotel, you pre-arrive, you arrive, you experience, and you talk about it. And then I said, Glenn, how about 2024? Same customer journey, right? So he goes through the same thing. The only thing that changes, to your point, is technology. If you're going to force, and then we did a poll of technology, where do you want it? So if you're going to force technology on me where I don't want it, that's shame on you. So what we found, a very, very focused poll, and we focused about 5 million people, right? 5 million people, Glenn, or 500?
I think the audience size was at high tech, something around that.
And so we
it's 5.1 million, Peter. We're just around.
We did the poll, and we asked all these questions. And one of the things that really surprised me is people don't mind a QR code in the hotel room. They don't mind it to order room service or order breakfast. They don't mind it. What they do mind is no one seemed to want QR codes in a restaurant. They want menus, right? But they wanted, and the same thing with tipping. They wanted QR codes for tipping because a lot of people don't carry cash. So it was very interesting, to your point, is don't put all of these things that you think I want on me, or things I don't want you putting on me, like the automatic gratuity and all that thing. So because people don't peel back and look at what's the customer journey, how does the customer want to experience that journey, and then start incorporating what you think would help them. But a lot of times, like you said, we're having problems, so we're going to make you, we're going to make you do this, until the guest pushes back and says, we don't want to do that.
So this is so true. It's almost backwards, because you made me think, when they always design, you look at the blueprint of a new hotel, and there's pathways that go down to the beach from the ground floor rooms. And, the pathways are weaving around this beautiful serpentine cement path, stone walkways. And then then you see the line through the grass. Everybody walks this way.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to the surf shop.
Right.
I mean, and all what they really needed to do was perhaps don't even put the path down yet. Wait for a month and watch where, like you said, watch where everyone walks, and then put the most lovely path down that direction, right? Because they, like, to your point, they know what they want and don't want, right? I mean, I think that one of the problems, too, is traveling a lot internationally, you guys must, too, is that clearly America is the most giddy about tech. I mean, you don't have that in Europe. They use it. They use social media, but they use it when it serves a purpose for them. They don't talk a lot about it. And when I was in a brilliant German resort in the Alps a few years ago, and I sat down in the dining room the first morning, and it was packed with international guests. And the waiter came over. The Germans in the cities will speak English great, right? But anyway, young guy came over. He said, "Good morning. Welcome. It's great to see you all. Welcome to the hotel and this and that. What can I get for you for breakfast?" And then he left and everything else. And I said to my wife, I know I'm not VIP'd here or something. I wonder, how did he know? That's so interesting. Because then he went to another table and he started speaking in French or German or Italian. So the next day I met the owner, and I told him about that. He said, it's simple. He said, what'd you do with your cell phone when you sat down for breakfast? I said, I took it out. I put it face down on the table. He said, well, that's an American. And then, and he said, if you start taking pictures of the first dish, you're either from New York or LA. Oh, he was dead serious. And he told me that's in his training program for the service staff.
Love that.
I mean, this is incredible. So, you see Gen Z and millennial kids, sitting at a cafe in Paris from France. There is not a phone out on that table.
Amazing.
Right? It's pretty rare. It's pretty rare. And they're not photographing their food. So culture plays a big role. And I always say culture, for better or for worse, always wins. It always dominates.
So
Well, because in their home, not only in the restaurants, it's not cool, but in their home, that's not allowed. It's not allowed to do that.
Great point.
Even though I'm an American, I'm from New York. No one can have their phone even on the table in my house. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to look at it. Even mine, I hide it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to look at it. Every once in a while, my kids will grab it for something, but
we have to use it to solve a fight at the dinner table. But other than that, it's not.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Or it's just see who won Jeopardy because we didn't watch Jeopardy last night or something. But and it's so true. But what I like the fact, the nuance of the training is, it's not 100%, but it gives you an indication of who's at your table. But before, when you were talking about all the things, I don't want this to go unsaid, all the things that the restaurants do to kind of, make your journey a little bit more difficult when you're sitting in a restaurant. Why, when you go to a restaurant, whatever restaurant you go to, and mostly the high-end hotels do it or restaurants do it well, but they do auctioning. Like, you put all these rules on me, but you can't even give me the dish that I asked for. You have to auction. Who gets this? Who gets this? Who gets that? And that blows me away. It's like, okay, you're losing money. You need to put this fee and that fee and all that stuff. Okay, but at least get the service right.
So, okay, this is so key. Thank you for bringing this up. One of the very first things that I do at our hotels, and some people will disagree with it, but it's been rare, is we don't ask if someone has allergies when you sit down in a restaurant. Right. Now, some terrible things can happen. Someone can say, I told the chef, and then the chef accidentally puts something. They're horror stories, have happened, very tragic, serious things over the years, but far and few between. But we never want that to happen here either. Well, what we find is we've got an educated clientele. People are generally aware of their allergic conditions. They may volunteer them. In fact, in many cases, I'll say people say, you don't have nuts. I can't. Right. And a lot of people are carrying a special medical gear, as we know.
Yes.
They're ready to give themselves a massive injection in the middle of a packed restaurant to save their own life if necessary. But we're not a Swiss medical clinic. We're not trained medically beyond the Heimlich maneuver or anything else. And so, but most of all, we don't want to break the spirit of you two guys came in for dinner after this podcast, and you want to break bread, and you want to get a bottle of wine, you want to talk about what's going on, and you're with each other. It is not about us. It's not about interrupting to say what I call the 3-finger point. Here's your broccoli, here's your steak, here's your potato. Well, you're in a steakhouse. You ordered it off the menu. You know what a steak, broccoli, and a potato looks like. So I'm not sure when the guy was giving an engagement ring to his girlfriend why you had to interrupt to point at the broccoli. I don't understand this. So we overstate it in the training. We say silent service, meaning get in, get out, engage. If they ask you a question, be very affable. It's a lovely, they want to know about your career, what you're doing, anything else. But this is not, I say to them, I have a general rule with my spouse. If we've been interrupted throughout a meal, even nicely, with good intention, more than 50% of the meal, it was a failure because I didn't come to talk to them. I came to talk to her. And this assumption in American restaurants, 2 things, that we're going to talk to you the whole time. And number 2 is that you came here because our food's kind of amazing and we're going to show you. You don't have that in Europe or Asia. You know why you came in, and it's not about the chef in most cases, unless it's even brilliant. So I think that is an important aspect of service. In the music, the music world, there's that saying, the loudest sound in the world is silence,
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing here is what you don't play between the notes.
Yep, exactly.
And when you're improvising, right? And it's the same thing here. How little do you need to say to execute stunning service, right? And it's different in every theme, restaurant, and everything else. But that's a little bit of our philosophy here. And I think as an independent, we have to work harder because we're surrounded by big box luxury chains. They're all run by mutual friends of ours, and they're we worked for them before. I was a Rosewood guy for years. Yeah. They do a great job, but the larger they grow in scale worldwide, the more consistency they have to achieve to please the guests who move around between them. And with consistency, you become institutionalized over time. Welcome to the blank, welcome to the blank, welcome to the blank. So you script everybody for consistency, and the character starts to slowly come out of the tire. You know, the air comes out slowly. And that's where as an independent, we have our advantage, you know.
Yeah. You saw that when they started to do the soft brands. For a minute, they kept the soft brand soft, but now you're starting to see that institutionalized behavior in some soft brands.
It's creeping in. It's creeping in, right? Yeah, yeah. And also, we don't believe in designing. You could design certain services and products for a generationally, you know, Gen Z and millennial, but we don't believe that hotels should be designed, brands should be designed generationally, because what happens in 4, 5, 6 years, they get older and they're gone, and the next generation's a different generation, right? So
yeah, man. Peter, I remember when all the brands were like, "This hotel's designed for millennials." I'm like, when they have kids, right? Come on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I can say that, you know, Hyatt has terrific youthful brand that was up the street here that closed because, you know, it was very kind of millennial yoga, stretching, whatever. And those millennials, 6 years later, figured out, oh, wow, I got married, I had kids, I'm not going to nightclubs anymore, I don't have time to do stretching and yoga for an hour at a school, you know, at a classroom. I got a baby in a stroller, and, you know, we got a house payment. And so it just didn't work anymore. And Gen Zs don't do yoga like millennials do yoga. So, you know, it's very short-lived. And you look at those big box brands, they got 27 sub-brands. And as my late dear friend, the late great George Raphael once said to me, brands are overrated. The idea of brands are overrated. You know, we're too stuck on it. We're too stuck.
But I'm going to disagree with you when you say Gen Zs don't do yoga. If they can get a 10-second TikTok clip on it, they will be. It will only be 10 seconds.
You're right. I'll watch it. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I know we have to wrap up. I have to ask you one more question. We haven't talked about Halekulani Okinawa at all. How is that a little different between the Hawaiian experience, and how are you thinking about the delivery of service through the Japanese prism, the Hawaiian prism, and the American prism, and how are they a little bit different in expressing luxury overseas?
Right. Well, here I was myself suddenly faced with that same challenge of scale, you know, with the first step. And, you know, what should be the same and what should be different, unique to each of the two properties. So, for example, we at the core, something that's very timeless, iconic, we did a house without a key, restaurant over the sea dancing, but there's more Okinawan than hula dancing. Right. It's germane to the locale and so forth. What we ended up learning the most, Glenn, was that it came down to the ethereal. It came down to soft service. It came down to the level of graciousness, sincerity, hospitality, anticipatory service. That's what really got to be key. And we took Patricia Tam, our iconic prior GM here, and, you know, Patty's our chief executive advisor now, and she went out at the opening of that 5 years ago already and gave a fabulous speech about why it's important to strive for great service. And that young group of Japanese, 400 of them, they got it. Somehow they got it. She got it across, and they got their 5th star, the Forbes 5-star in the third year. And I'm going to be there in 2 weeks celebrating, giving a speech at the 5th anniversary already. And with domestic travel in Japan, and now with the yen down too, on top of everything else, it's packed. So it's been a great success, and we're thinking about California for a third eventually.
Fantastic! I would love to see you expand.
First time I've said that.
I know. Yeah, that's we're bringing some good here. Hopefully, I know I said that was the last question, but this is the last question. Are more Japanese now returning to Hawaii as they were prior to the 2020 incident?
Not prior to 2020, no. It's about 38% only still, because so what's happened in Hawaii, simple terms, is that so Japan, Australia, Korea, China, Canada, South America, with the exception of Europe, all the inbound foreign country feeder markets for Hawaii, the dollar's just pummeling their currency still. Right. So they are coming back steadily, and it is increasing, but it's extraordinarily gradual.
Yeah, I heard it's like 168 to 1 yen or something like that right now.
Yeah, it's in the low 160s. Yeah, about 162. Yeah. It's the softest since 1987.
Right.
Pre-bubble. So it's really a problem. But we've turned it into an opportunity and said, what can we do for those who come and what can we do for those there and we've traveled there. We're traveling there next week and saying, what's most important to you? I mean, room rate is one thing, but how can we work on this together to get you back now and offer you something that's bearable for you financially and
Right.
really worth it, that you would have paid more. So it's we never waste a good crisis. It's getting better, but slowly.
Good. I love your attitude. Peter Shaindlin, thanks for teaching us so much today. Just when you thought we knew it all, you really helped reframe stuff for us.
Thanks, guys. I learned too.
Hey, I appreciate it. Anthony, what's your big takeaway? What's your big takeaway? What's your big takeaway, Anthony?
My big takeaway that no matter how long you're in this business, no matter how many things you've done in this business,
Yep.
now how challenging this business is, the people who are A-type personalities who love this business don't see the problems, they just see the solutions. And it sounds like he just started this business last week and he's trying to prove himself.
I know. I absolutely love the enthusiasm. And you're going to love re-listening to this show and all of our other shows by listening to us on the audio feed. Make sure you get that wherever you get your podcasts. And again, on video or on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And of course, all shows are housed at novacancynews.com. I want to thank you all for being here. And we'll see you next time right back here on No Vacancy Live. And until then, you've got one life. So blaze on and
Be kind to yourself.